to Beyond the Ring, a podcast that covers all things in the stock show industry from the informative to the insane, starring Ryan Rash.
This isn't a bakery. I don't sugarcoat anything.
And Dale Hummel.
Solutions are often found outside the box.
Now on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Ring. This is Dale Hummel alongside co-star Ryan Rash.
Hello, hello, hello.
Ryan, it's another busy week. One of these episodes, we're going to have a calm week. Current events will take 2 minutes and life will be good.
It will be 2 weeks after the election.
I predict that is correct. I hope that's correct. I hope you and I are in a good mood at that point.
Yeah, because the first week after the election, I'm going to have a lot to say. No matter what happens, I'm just going to tell you. Like, that may just need to be directed to the whole episode. But anyway.
So you think just skip the livestock topic and just address
that? If you read these reviews, everybody says they'd much rather listen to the current events than our livestock knowledge. So evidently we don't have very much livestock knowledge, Dale, but we have a world of political knowledge. So.
There is maybe some truth to that. I can't argue with that a lot.
That's why we have guests.
Exactly. And we have two great guests that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Before we get started in our current events, because there are a few that I would like to talk about, and I'm not going to talk about China today.
It's a miracle.
It is. Before I get into that, there is one thing I would like to try to encourage any of our listeners. Even if I get one of them to do it, it'll make me feel better.
Vote for Trump.
Well, that's a given. Random acts of kindness towards police are happening. We're not hearing a lot about it, but it is happening. If anybody out there listening comes in contact with a police officer, even if you're getting a speeding ticket, even then, or in any manner, tell them thank you. Speak out, say thank you, in some manner convey your appreciation, because I am genuinely concerned we will not have very many of the good police officers that stay in that field if things continue as they have the past couple weeks.
If I run into any police officer and it looks like the ones on TikTok, I will be more than happy to be kind to them any way they want me to.
I'm not even going to talk about the TikTok police. We're just hopeful that TikTok will disappear.
No,
China will take it back. Okay,
you need to think about what you just said. If this defund the police movement continues on and TikTok is gone, what are the hot cops of TikTok going to do for work?
I don't know. You can sponsor them.
I'll be glad to.
Well, Ryan, you posted a question on Facebook a couple days ago that a few days ago that had a huge response. Would you like to dive into that one?
Well, I know that Trump nor the Democrats have control over if the schools open up in the fall or late August or not, but they have both drawn a line in the sand, and the Republicans and Trump especially, are open schools up. It's got to happen, needs to happen. And the Democrats are like, he's killing small children. So I am not a parent. Thank God. I mean, there are reasons for that. But I just wanted to know what parents actually thought, whether they were comfortable sending their kids back to school or they were not. And I did not expect it to blow up like it did, but it did. And I don't know. Last time I checked, it was right at 1,000 comments. I don't know if it's over, but I will tell you, I did try to read them all, and then some people got into some fights and stuff, and I didn't get all of that. But I do know the last time I kept a little running tally, there was less than 20 that said schools needed to remain closed, and they did not feel comfortable sending their children back to school in the fall. Now, that is an overwhelming majority. Now, Dale had to point out and ruin my day that he thinks that my audience are all Republicans, but I tend to disagree with that. But I don't care. Even if all the Republicans and some of the independents think that way, I will feel a lot better about this election in November.
I would agree with all of that. And I am a parent with 2 college-age kids and 2 still primary school age children. And my gut tells me we need the kids back in school. However, I feel as though, like everything COVID related, I am unable to make an educated decision, as I do not have access to what I call common sense research that will allow myself and others the ability to make informed decisions on everything COVID related. I want some simple things. Let's take 2,000 random people from New York City, residents of New York City that have obviously been in a high COVID environment, administer an antibody test, tell me where the results are. This would give us a real look at how much it's spread and what portion of the population. I think the antibody testing in New York City, I think we'd be shocked with how many people have been exposed to it that were asymptomatic. And for some reason, and I blame a lot of this on the political environment, we're not able to get access to this kind of common sense data. It seems simple. We're arguing over how long antibodies last. Well, it's been around here since December, January, and in other countries, February, March in this country. Take some of those people that were originally exposed, check their antibody levels now, check them again in 30 days. This is not difficult science, but something is hindering some of the common sense implementation of what I call real science.
I think you're missing the much bigger point. And I hate to disagree with you, Dale, because I just hate that. But anyway, the reason no other country is having a second wave of coronavirus and the reason other countries have sent kids back to school and not have a problem is because they are not trying to get rid of a president in November.
No, I agree. There is really no other explanation. What if you just had real accurate hospitalization numbers alongside real accurate hospital capacity that we can see where things are? Yeah, maybe one of the hospitals in Houston's getting full. Let's push them a little further out of town into the suburbs. Maybe they're wide open. But you're right. It may be more politically motivated than anything, but I do not like the fact that I cannot do the research and get real numbers for myself to make an educated decision. It bothers me.
Time out. The hottest topic in the news right now is kids going back to school. If these people had any hardcore evidence that the children were not going to be safe or multiple children had died from coronavirus and all this, it would be all over there. Do you hear of one? One. Have you heard of one?
No, I agree completely. And I do believe that the children are difficult to contract, asymptomatic, unlikely to spread, all of those factors. So I am in favor of it, but I would feel much better for the teachers and the grandparents that some of the kids are going back home to if I had more availability to research.
Lord, you're becoming more of a liberal every day.
No. You are incorrect. I just don't know enough about it. Would I send my children back to school? Yes. Do I think people maybe deserve the choice? They can go on public education online. Absolutely. If they want to send their children in.
They have a choice now.
Yes.
They can either send them to public school or they can homeschool them. You got a choice right now. Don't even go there with me. Oh, no. No. You have a choice already.
I am going to help your case. I see commercials on TV that you can get public education free online for anybody. So, I mean, there is choices. You're absolutely right. And I am good with that.
Damn it. You got a choice until Biden wins. I'm just telling you right now. You got a choice. That's like whether you want to walk outside and go to Walmart or not.
And Ryan, I appreciate how you've strongly spoken out about the media blowing up everything negative COVID and how it honestly has isolated the United States from the rest of the world, that we are terrible. And every bit of it is politically motivated.
Do you realize the aliens pass over above and they're like, oh, hell no, we're not landing there.
They're going to go on to Canada or somewhere else. I get it.
We're going to some other part, trying to steal some other bodies because this ain't going to work out.
Now, we do know that a lot of the major cities are already canceling those schools, and there is so much data that supports these kids need to be in school. I am on board. The kids need to be in school. I wish I had more data to fight back for that, if that is truly the case. But
no, and in serious note, I'm making a lot of fun of this, but this is the serious thing. Again, I'm not a parent, but I do know that there are a lot of kids in this country that 2 of their meals come from when they come to school. Most of the abuse that happens in school-age children is found at schools. That is where it is come to life. And so many other things, I'm not even getting into the psychological and all that stuff about how kids need to be around other kids and have interaction, all this stuff, but I'm talking about there are kids that depend on schools for food. And also, if they don't go back to school, a lot of kids are going to continue to be abused, and it's never going to be found out. And that's real. That's just the truth.
That is. And I think there's such a low risk for the children at school that they need to be there. Let's be smart about who is in their family environment. Let's be smart about some of the educators that are maybe elderly and or have some secondary conditions that make them more susceptible. We can do it, and we can do it smart. Just like the colleges and universities and the schools are talking about social distancing, 2-day schedules. I appreciate that they're trying to put thought into it, but guess what? These college kids are all coming back to dorms and apartments and fraternities and sororities and together. Those things just aren't going to work. I don't know why they think they can keep everybody separate in the classroom, then boom, they're all together. Same thing in elementary education. If these kids are not in school, they're probably going to be at daycare. And I promise you, we're not social distancing, or we're not at daycare. So it's a no-win situation both ways. What is the lesser evil? Probably putting them in school normal.
See, I think everyone under that are in high school and below should go back to school. I do not think college-age kids should go back to school until after the election, because those Democrats show up at those colleges and register them that day, and then they vote the next day, and I don't need any of that. So I think college, they should get a semester off until January, but that's just my personal opinion.
Okay, we're going to keep moving to keep this current events shorter than normal. St. Louis.
Oh, Lord. Here we go again.
Kim Gardner, the prosecutor in St. Louis, that 70% of her campaign funds was George Soros donated. She's a George puppet. You have the McCloskey family, husband and wife, that may soon be indicted for legally protecting themselves on their property. My research indicates they deserve a tax refund for doing the job of the government.
Dale, I'm going to go over this again. Now, I hate to disagree with you, but I do not think those people should have been waving guns at people that were walking down the middle of the road.
The gay is wrong on this one. They broke through a private gate, security gate, to come into this.
They were not marching on these people's house. They were going 2 blocks down the way to the mayor.
They were not marching on their house because they had 2 guns in their hands. They were there protecting their home, so they did not come that direction. Did they talk about burning down their house? Did they talk about harming them? It may have been instigated because they're standing there with guns, but they did mention those things.
No joke, because they were sitting there waving a rifle and a pistol at a bunch of people walking down the road. Yeah, I'm going to burn your house down too.
Now, if we rewind a month, if we had business owners and other people standing up for their property with guns, such as the McCloskeys had, you think maybe we'd be the protesters and the rioters would...
Those businesses were under attack.
Yes, they were. And if there would have been people there with guns in front of them...
not under attack.
You don't know it wouldn't have been if they wouldn't have been standing there.
Oh, my Lord.
They broke down a gate to get into this housing complex.
Dale is trigger happy. He won't admit it. He's trigger happy.
No. But I do believe if they're absolutely guilty of something, that we do waste a lot of money in the court system that we could avoid.
Okay, we're moving on. Next.
New York City.
Oh, Lord. You had to bring up him.
It's falling apart at every level. Crime is completely out of control. Mayor de Blasio answer to this is, let's paint a Black Lives Matters mural in front of Trump Towers. Are you kidding me?
Because that's going to solve things.
Exactly. I am.
Where was Black Lives Matter when that 1-year-old child got shot on Sunday?
Where are they every day that Black youth are being murdered in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles? Where I have not heard them, and I'm sure they have. I'm sure somebody involved with Black Lives Matters has said it, but in the big picture, I'm not hearing anything about it. And if I set political preferences aside and just speak about Black Lives Matters and how they're approaching things, I don't get it. I do not get how Mayor de Blasio can be in charge of a major city. It just astonishes me that his gross incompetence, along with a counterpart, AOC, who speaks up and says people are just hungry, so they're shoplifting bread is what she thinks a major problem in New York City is. Not that maybe she pushed Amazon out of her district and there's not enough jobs. I'm completely perplexed with the ignorance that we're dealing with some of these people that are in charge.
Oh, well, it's real and it's live and it's tangible, but the whole New York City, even you can take it all the way up to the governor and his whole idiot moron mess with putting the elderly people that had COVID back into the nursing homes and causing all those deaths. It's just a terrible, terrible mess. And do you know what the most reported thing over the last 2 days has been?
I do not.
That New York had 0 deaths yesterday for the first time since March.
Be specific, 0 COVID deaths.
0 COVID deaths. That was blown up more. I mean, and they are praising these people for their handling of it and all this stuff. And yeah, it's a tranny wreck.
It hit there first. They've gone through the horrible part of it. Now they're back on the rebound. The rest of the country is a little slower to contract COVID-19 than maybe we originally thought. And they're all going to go through the same pattern. And eventually it's going to calm back down. But you know what? We better talk about something else.
Oh, well, we're going to get off current events, but I do need to say one final thing before.
I have a couple more current events.
Well, then go ahead. I want to be the end.
I want to talk about squirrels. Do you know anything about squirrels?
Yes, I know that there is a squirrel that has bubonic plague running somewhere around in the nation. Yes, I do realize this.
In Colorado. And there is a simple fix for this. Obviously, rodents can spread that. Fleas can jump on a rodent, jump on us. Or the other problem that I wasn't going to talk about China, that in other countries, they're eating raw rodents, sometimes very large rodents. The simple solution, use a little bit of flea control on your pet. Do not eat a raw squirrel or prairie dogs or any other rodents. Just don't do it, and you're probably going to be okay.
Dale, I'm just going to speak for myself personally. I don't think I'm going to worry about this because I have never eaten cooked squirrel, much less raw squirrel.
Now, I will confess, as a child, family friends of ours, we actually went squirrel hunting a couple times, and I have consumed a cooked squirrel. I no longer consume squirrel. I think of it as actually a little odd reflecting back, but at the time, I was kind of proud of cooking that squirrel.
You're one of these people that tell your children that you walked uphill both ways in a snowstorm to school barefoot, aren't you?
I did. It was bad in Illinois. It was tough.
Yeah. Okay.
The other thing that I wanted to toss out there before we get a lot farther, and it's kind of in the middle of things, I've had several Facebook messages come into Beyond the Ring and in my personal account, and I'm sure Ryan's had some. There are a lot of replacement shows, and because we're going to talk to some show managers today that are taking place across the country for state fairs and other various shows. But unfortunately, it's difficult for those shows to really advertise what's going on and reach all the people they need to reach. Where here in the state of Illinois, we've got a couple replacement shows that the average person out there that shows livestock is very confused about. And I'm just going to encourage them to do some research, and you can find all the information out on Facebook, on the websites. But those people putting on the shows are walking a fine line where they want to get the word out, but they don't want to bring so much attention to it that it's going to throw red flags up for our beloved governor and some of the health officials here in Illinois. So do those things, please.
Are you done now?
I am. Roger Stone. I am not as
Thank you.
Please take over. Get it.
So anyway, I do not know if anyone from Team Trump is listening, but if they are, for the love of God, man, he could have sat in jail till November 3rd. Okay? Like, why are you doing things to make people not want to vote for you when we need you to win so much? Like, I just don't understand it. Like, do not do self-destructive stuff like this, Trump. I love you. I am your biggest cheerleader. You're probably the only gay one. But anyway, next, do not do stuff like this. And there has to be, like, maybe you thought that it would push them so far over the edge they try to impeach you again, and that would, like, help things. I don't know. But look, I do want to clear something up on this. He did not pardon Roger Stone. When you pardon someone, like Bill Clinton pardoned his brother, by the way, you absolve them of the crime. They no longer have a record, all this other stuff. He did not pardon Roger Stone. What he did was commute his sentence, which means he will not serve any jail time. He says he did this because man's an asthmatic and I don't know, like 612 years old and all this other stuff. And secondly, because it was a bunch of trumped up charges and a witch hunt off the Mueller deal. I get all that. My point is, do not do anything else to anger one other possible voter for you. Please, 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 please quit. Thank you.
Are you finished?
Yes, I'm done now.
Okay. I hope he's listening because that is some good advice.
God, he needs to.
I have one last public service announcement that I've encountered over the last.
You always have to get the last word in.
Well, I would like your input on this. It's shocking to me during COVID-19. Some businesses were busier. For example, pickup sales, golf carts, Polaris Rangers, all had record sales. I go to try to purchase a Polaris Ranger when normally there's 30 in inventory. There may be one. Appliances, our dryer broke down. Can't hardly find a replacement dryer of a similar quality. Lumberyard, half the lumber's absent. Electrical equipment for landscape lighting, almost non-existent. We're going to continue to see these supply chain issues for a while. So if you need something, guys, it may be too late, but get out there and buy it. Ryan, is there anything you're missing that you need?
Oh, there's tons, but I mean, probably not anything that needs to go over the air. But I mean, it's good that people are out of, stuff. That means stuff's selling. Good for them.
It does mean that. The one place I went to, the Polaris Ranger dealer, he's basically sold out of the Rangers. He sells some golf carts and other things, but he is basically sold out of everything, and the supply chain isn't bringing new ones in. He's in a bad position here in the very near future because he has nothing left to sell.
Suggest he call China.
No. Okay, we're going to move on to our topic, and this may be one of the best ones, especially for this time. And
this was my idea, by the way, listeners. Thank you. Next.
I strongly supported the idea, but it was Ryan's idea. We are so fortunate to have two leading livestock show officials with us today to help shed some light on how shows are dealing with COVID-19, as well as discussing some of the keys to successful stock shows. First up is Tyler Norvell. Tyler is the president of Onward Endowment for the Oklahoma Youth Expo. Tyler's born and raised in Oklahoma, consequently a graduate of Oklahoma State University, previously the vice president of public policy for Oklahoma Farm Bureau. Tyler's been involved with OYE since he was 9 years old, and in 2012 took on an official position at the Oklahoma Youth Expo. Tyler's been a large part of the success of what is referred to as the greatest show. Tyler, I personally appreciate you coming on today, and there's one thing that's very unique about OYE and how you make this such a memorable, lifelong type experience for a lot of the youth and their families that show there. And part of that is, in my opinion, looking in from the outside, is your ability to look outside the box in terms of sponsorship and in some of the things that you've created there, and the dollars in terms of scholarships that have been raised and the dollars for the champion sale. Give us a little insight on how you've come up with some of these sponsors, and maybe there's some that just haven't traditionally been youth ag sponsors.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Dale and Ryan, both, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed your podcast and listening, and consider it an honor to get to be a part of it. Oklahoma Youth Expo is very unique compared to other shows because we're a standalone 501c3. Like, we could go have our show anywhere because we rent the facility from the Oklahoma State Fairgrounds. Because of that, a lot of the money we get in, we've got to use to pay rent and to have our facility and other costs that other shows don't have. So we have to think outside the box. Every person that's been the executive director of Oklahoma Youth Expo, starting with Justin Whitefield, who I know you knew well, Ryan, to Jeremy Rich, to myself, all of us have had a tie to politics in Oklahoma. We ran the show first and foremost, but we all lobbied on the side, which I still do today. And through those contacts lobbying, people get to learn about the Oklahoma Youth Expo, and we get to meet a different crowd. And then you try to get them involved and learn about the Oklahoma Youth Expo. I don't know if y'all know this, but during the show each year, we have a legislative show where there's 149 members of the Oklahoma legislature, and about 120 of those come to the fairgrounds and show an animal with a kid from their district. Well, with that, businesses who had nothing to do with agriculture started paying attention because of the political side. At the same time, these people started realizing those are the kids we want to hire someday to come work for our company, because they're kids that show up to work, they can pass a drug test, they have integrity, they have character, they are who they want to hire. And I remember when I went to one company in particular that had nothing to do with agriculture and was selling them, they said, hey, we want to help these kids. We want to help them buy their animals. We want to do what we can for them now. But the main reason we want involved in your event is because when they graduate, either high school or college, we want them to come to work for us. And that's something that we've been able to sell, and it's not hard to sell, but it's the human capital part. And our kids do that themselves. But you name another activity that kids do where they have to put another living creature before themselves and take care of them, where they have to learn to manage money, they have to get up early and stay out late. And the harder they work, usually the better they do. And you just start looking at all these things, and it just draws people in, and they want to be a part of your event, and the kids sell themselves. So I told folks years and years ago, there were very few people involved in the business community and the legislature that were involved with our program. And now tons of them are involved, to the point that the Speaker of the House's kids show, the governor's kids show. There's a dozen members of the legislature whose kids show. And it's just something folks want to be a part of, just because what it does for communities and for the young people. So that's how we've got them involved, thinking outside the box. We appreciate our sponsors that are traditional ag companies, show companies, whatever it may be, and they are vital to our success. But they need to be involved. They want to be involved for their company and for sales and things like that, and that's important. But thinking outside the box and going and getting those non-traditional companies involved have just been huge for us at the Oklahoma Youth Expo.
I was actually there at Oklahoma Youth Expo this past year, and I saw firsthand the dedication that you and the staff and all the volunteers had to keeping that show going for those kids and those families. And it truly was just overwhelming. And if you weren't there, then you can't even describe it in words, to be honest. And the heartbreak that was evident on all of you when it did have to come to an early close, it was just something that was really, really moving. And in talking about that, one of the most miraculous things that I've seen of any livestock show throughout my years, and I was born into this industry, is that OYE announced very shortly after that show came to an early close that they were going to allow the seniors to have another shot at OYE 2020. And I'm not from Oklahoma, but I am from Texas, and lots of seniors had some heartbreak to deal with not getting to participate at Houston and Austin, and they're not going to have the chance that the kids in Oklahoma are. And I just want to make sure that our listeners know that y'all have gone to such great lengths as you have, because it is truly amazing.
Thank you for that, Ryan. And I've said this, and I got to credit someone else for this quote, but whenever OYE got canceled, and I don't know if you were there when it actually happened during the Supreme Heifer Drive, and
Yes, sir.
it's just kind of a blur for me. But literally, you looked around and people were mourning a death. Luckily nobody lost any family members, but it was like people were mourning a death, from my child to my staff to every person there. It's something I never want to relive again. But that next morning, Jimmy Harrell was out on the fairgrounds, our vice chairman, and we had a discussion. And I said, hey, we need to, he actually said, I think we need to let these seniors come back. And I said, I agree with you. I said, we can't dictate if their counties let them show again, because they all got to have their county shows or the districts or whatever. But at OYE, if you were a senior with a market animal, now the breeding show all completed. So on the breeding side, that we're not going to allow that. They got the finish out. But on the market side, if you're a senior, you get to come back if you had an entry this year. And so it'll be interesting to see how many students do that. It's kind of interesting. Some are determined they are, and others said, that part of we appreciate you offering that, but that part of my life's over. I'm going to move on to college. But we sure wanted to give that option to those young people. So it's crazy, the things you don't think of. You never think you'll have to live through something like that or be involved in it. And just once we announced it was over, the chaos that ensued for the next 5 hours are just, you deal with things you would never imagine, and issues you thought would be huge issues for nothing. And the things you thought never even crossed your mind became chaotic and huge mountains to overcome. So like I said, it came out of the blue, or I mean, it didn't come out of the blue, but it's something you never prepare for, and you really can't prepare for it.
And Tyler, that's an incredible story as far as letting those seniors come back. I mean, just common sense. It makes sense. Let's let them have that senior year if they choose to do so. And it'll be interesting to see how many come back with that. Going back to what you're visiting with about when that news came in, obviously you were aware that it was a possibility. I don't know how much communication there was with the health department, things like that. But under those circumstances and knowing what's going on and that it might happen, I mean, obviously your thoughts, you thought you guys were going to be able to get through the whole thing.
Yeah, I jokingly have said the 5 days we had OYE seemed like 5 years, and it seems like it's been 5 years since we were there. But it hit me hard when Houston canceled. I didn't see that coming. It hadn't really crossed our minds, to be frank with you. And then Houston canceled, and everything turned to us. And then Ryan knows this. I don't know if you know this, Dale, but the first weekend of OYE every year, we have the livestock buildings, but the big house where we show the sheep and the cattle, the first weekend they're having state basketball tournament there. And they canceled the state basketball tournament on the facility we're on. And everybody's like, all spotlights on us. And I've got to give total credit to Blaine Arthur, our Secretary of Agriculture, who I'm sure you both know, and her involvement in the livestock show industry. And I called her first, and immediately she was our conduit to the state health department. We talked to them 4 to 5 times a day. Is it safe to be here? Because our message was, we are going to continue to have this show until state health department says it's not safe, which means, or the county health department, they'd put out an ordinance or an order that, you can't have public gatherings. Y'all got to go home. We said, as long as the experts in the state, when it comes to health, say we can have a show, why would we cancel? We're going to continue to have a show. And that's what we did. And we continued to communicate. We thought every morning you wake up, you're wondering if it was going to be your last day. And then we go into Saturday, and the governor told us, hey, well, I'm behind you. We're going to have this thing, but you might find a way to shorten it up. And I don't know if you remember that, Ryan. We released a schedule quick that said we're going to try to be out of here by Wednesday. And this was on Saturday. And once we released that schedule, our staff and all of us kind of thought, we're going to get through this thing. We can do it. We see the end. We've got a plan. We can get this done. Sunday's going by. Everything's going great. And we're implementing the contingency plan. And I was sitting in my office on the fairgrounds, getting ready to go down and watch the Grand Heifer drive. My daughter had Champion Purebred Simmental, and my phone just starts blowing up that a press conference was coming from the mayor of Oklahoma City. And the governor didn't realize it was coming. The state health department didn't. I had talked to the mayor a couple of times, and boom, there it was. And I drove over with Jennifer Callahan, our lawyer, to the office of the general manager of the state fair. And whenever the emergency proclamation came out, everybody said, you can't continue. We've got to go home. And drove back over and made that announcement. It was just a really, really sad, disappointing time for a lot of people. But, unfortunately we didn't have much of a contingency plan if it canceled, because we were planning on finishing, but we got everybody out there in an orderly fashion. And I think you guys will find this interesting. And you may have already heard this. Do you know how many people tested positive for COVID from OYE? Have you heard the number?
I have not.
0.
That's wonderful.
It was. And I'm telling you, I was told when I took this job running the show, congratulations, you've just become a liability manager. And so my wife had me nervous. And there were a couple of sleepless nights for about 14 days after that show. And you kept waiting for somebody to say, hey, we tested positive from your show, and it never came. So that was a huge relief.
No, that is huge. And I guess just for our listeners out there, and obviously you and I and Ryan understand this, but irregardless of where you guys are at in terms of the show moving forward, and you're not going to do it unless it's safe, just like what came down there, it's not necessarily your decision. It can be canceled by the health department, the mayor, the governor. Others are involved.
Absolutely. They are involved. And, I would just encourage other shows to if you're considering canceling or you're worried about it, look to your state health officials. They're the experts. Let them help you make the decision. We were never going to cancel OYE until a health expert from the state said, "Hey, it's not safe for you to be here." And then if you continue on after that, in my opinion, if the health experts say, "Hey, you can't be there," then it becomes a real liability for you to continue on. But yes, and that's why it's important. I feel that anybody running a show should have strong relationships with local leadership and local officials. I think it's extremely important to build those relationships.
Absolutely. And, you talked about how you never saw Houston coming. I don't think anybody in Houston saw that coming, because the day that they canceled it, we were moving junior heifers into the barn. And if they saw it coming, they wouldn't have let all those kids get in line, and half of them move in and half of them not. So it took everybody off guard. One question I have for you, Tyler, is that as we go through this and we continue on, and eventually there's going to be a vaccine or a therapeutic, but I want to know, do you see any positive changes in the junior livestock show industry that will come from this battle that we have had to keep these shows going and operating and actually happening for these kids?
Yeah, and the changes that I'm going to tell you about are not tangible. They're intangible. But the first thing I see, and I may be hoping more than I see it, but I sure saw it at OYE this year, is I think we are not going to take shows for granted, that it is a privilege, not a right, to get to show livestock. I have never been thanked more in my life than I was those 5 days at Oklahoma Youth Expo. And I appreciated your comments, Ryan, but we were doing it for those kids, but I really think people knew how hard we were trying to keep that show going. It's kind of funny. We got a call, Blaine Earther got a call from the White House the last day of the show before they even canceled. And they said, "You realize you're the only event of your size going on in the United States right now?" And she goes, "Yeah, we know we're a big ag event." They go, No. Any event of any size, OYE is it. It's it. It's the biggest show going, or biggest event going in the country that still hasn't been canceled. So if that doesn't show how hard we fought and how long we held in there, I don't know what would. But the positive changes are, I think we're going to appreciate the shows more. We're going to appreciate show leadership more, I hope. But I also hope, from a show leadership standpoint, that it puts the focus on the kids. What's best for the kids? I think a frustration of mine is, growing up in Oklahoma, I was very blessed, had a lot of shows. I always say, Ryan, we're second to Texas in terms of opportunities to show. Oklahoma, we're your little brother. But at times when I was growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s, shows became really unenjoyable at times, because you were more worried about who could comb your steer, who could fit your heifer, what you could or couldn't do in terms of rules. And I hope that some of the shows that get so consumed with catching cheaters, they reevaluate and realize, hey, 99.9% of our industry is pretty honest, and we should focus on making this experience enjoyable for these kids, because you know what? It's also a privilege to get to put on a stock show, and it's a privilege for us to get to come show. And there's just a greater appreciation on both sides for the opportunities these kids get to have, and that you only have so many years you can show, because as those seniors learned, you never know, you may not get that closure that you want and get to finish out your career. So we don't need to take these for granted. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that's understandable. I can't point to a lot of tangible issues. Now, one tangible thing may be you got to sign a lot more legal release forms whenever you come to a show from a health standpoint, but I just hope there's a greater appreciation on both sides for what we get to do.
And Tyler, I think that intangible you're talking about right there, that appreciation, I'm seeing it at every backyard jackpot show, everything that's going on right now. And I'm not saying that we as an industry and the families that are showing aren't appreciative to go to shows, but all of a sudden, those little things that may not be perfect, you're not in the perfect stall, you're not in the first one to show in your breed, or whatever it may be that used to maybe concern us in the past, those things are gone. Now we're just darn happy to have a show, to get those kids in the ring. And I love that philosophy on putting the focus on the kids, and the simple fact that 99.9% of the people that are doing things right, oftentimes, like we're seeing in the world today, those that are speaking up the loudest, that are representing us, or allowing our country to be defined in the wrong direction, let's get away from that. Let's focus on those people that are doing the right thing, and the same thing in our show ring. Those those kids that are busting their butt in the barn every day, those families that are dedicating everything they've got to give them that experience. I absolutely love it. And the fact that you do put that focus that direction is if you just focus around that one thing, let's put the focus on the exhibitor, the rest of it falls in place.
I agree totally. I tell the story often. The night I was hired, about 11 o'clock at night at Bob Funk's office, Bob Funk and Jimmy Harrell offered me the job. And the one thing they told me, they said, we got your back, but if you go in there and make a lot of rules and make it unfun for the exhibitors, we will fire you. And I've never forgot that.
That's real simple. Absolutely simple. Well, I wanted to bring up going just a little bit another direction. It was quite a while ago that I'd heard that you had some conversations with some of the breeders in California about trying to help them get a replacement show once their state fair was canceled. And we know the COVID numbers in California don't look good, and especially in the location where it's at. But what was involved there, or how were you approached on something like that to jump in and try to help out?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy how it all came together. But a gentleman named Curtis Bain and Jake Parnell from California got our number and reached out and said, hey, we want to put together a show, an alternative show for these young people, but we also want to build it to be a show that we could have long term and have what you have there, or try to, and make it exist for however long as we can keep it going. And they said, we think we can raise money, but we don't have the time or the expertise how to put on a show, how to do entries and pay premiums and set rings up. We don't know that, but y'all know how to do that, and that's what you do. So can we hire you to come help us put on this event? And I didn't tell a lot of people, but I flew out there in April in the middle of the pandemic, had a whole 5 people on my plane, and met with them and looked at the facility there at Tulare and said, hey, I think we can pull this off. And that's how it kind of came about. And it's been a lot of fun. We hope it's something that is just not a 1-year deal, that we do this long term. The COVID numbers out there concern us, it concern everybody, but we are still moving forward to like that show's going to happen. I mean, we had for the first year had tons of nominations, nominating in California. I don't know what it's like in the North, Dale, but I know in Texas with validating, and here in Oklahoma with nominating, it's something we're used to, but it was kind of a new concept to our friends in California. And we got through that process. And for the first year, they got to nominate for free, just so we would make sure people knew they could nominate. So anyway, it's going well, and hopefully we can get to have an event out there in a few weeks.
Not only are y'all doing a replacement show for California, but Oklahoma State Fair just canceled. And now y'all have even gone a step further, and y'all are even putting on a replacement show for that. So instead of just having one show a year, you're having 3 this time, it seems like.
Yeah, I hold my breath every time I walk into the office every morning to make sure I still have a staff. No, that's a complete joke. My staff is more passionate about it than me, because that's one thing I'm proud of. Every young person, or I say they're young, they're younger than me, but all the folks that work for us here at Oklahoma Youth Expo, every one of them either showed in Oklahoma and went through the program, and every one of them were in our leadership class at OYE that we do for college seniors. And so they're passionate about making sure these young people in Oklahoma have opportunities. We loosely partner with the Oklahoma State Fair to help put on their junior shows, in particular the Hog Show and the Prospect Steer Show. That's something that Justin Whitefield arranged back 15 years ago. And when they canceled, I said, hey, guys, what do you think about us going and putting on a show somewhere if we can find a location? And they said, absolutely, we need to do it. And so it took us about 2 days to find a facility. And, all the ones we called first were booked. It was crazy how booked up these county facilities in Oklahoma are, but it worked out perfect that Duncan was available, where we can have all 4 species there at once. We were talking to Duncan. I don't know if either one of you have ever been to Duncan, but it's a middle-sized town for Oklahoma, but they are 100% booked capacity for their hotel rooms for that weekend now. And so they're glad to see us coming, but hopefully we look forward to pulling that off. And entries open August 1st and close the 28th. And I fully expect it to be the same size, if not bigger, than the Oklahoma State Fair Junior Show usually is.
That is impressive. And the fact that we can step in and have some of these replacement shows. And I know we're making that attempt to have a replacement show here, Tyler, and I believe you're coming in to sort the cattle. It sounds like we're happy to have you come to Illinois, and like you, just a little bit like the California show, we're pretty good on numbers right here in Illinois, but we may not have the support of the governor. Fortunately, where the show's located, the health department is very supportive, and and working with the show officials to make sure this happens. But it's all an unknown until that day happens. And it's frustrating, but I think until we get through all this, I don't know that we have a lot of choices.
That's right. We have to keep shows and keep opportunities and keep the positive vibes for these young people and for the breeders too. I mean, it goes twofold. I really respect and appreciate all the people across the country that are stepping up and giving these kids the opportunity that they need, exhibit livestock wherever it may be. So I don't know of any, and I'm asking you guys, I don't know of any state whose fair has been canceled that hasn't popped up an alternative show. I'm not aware of any, and that makes me really proud.
No, I agree, and I'm not aware either. Now there may be some of those replacement shows that don't get to take place, but at least that effort's being made. And it's amazing how many what we call those pop-up jackpot or backyard shows, and Ryan's had a chance to judge as many of them probably as anybody. But the fact that people are stepping up in the state of Indiana, Illinois is still a little bit slower than normal, but in the state of Indiana, there's probably double the shows now compared to last year that the youth have a chance to go to. On any given weekend, I believe there's 3 point shows in Indiana going on simultaneously at different locations in the pig side. It's wonderful. I hope that these people that are stepping up to put on some of these shows, I hope they continue next year and the following year. The more choices these kids have and the more shows we have to get out, it's incredible. And think about some of those states that maybe have their county fair and their state fair and maybe one jackpot show. We're not as blessed as, and you referred to as Texas, but even there in Oklahoma, we get up in the north and especially here in Illinois, up until recently, we'll have a county fair, maybe a jackpot we can go to, and then our state fair. But think about all those hours that go into the barn to get that kid in the ring 1 or 2 times. Let's let them get out and show, and especially if there's something that pops up locally where it's within a few hours drive. And I love the fact that it's happening. I hope it continues into the future.
Absolutely.
Ryan, you've been involved in a lot of those, and from what I can tell, at least looking in from the outside, these shows would start up assuming they're going to have 50 to 100 head. What has it been like?
I just told a group on Sunday that ever since the last week in April, I don't know exactly how many different states I've been in, but I've judged at least 2 shows every weekend from the last weekend in April. Now it's mid-July, I guess. I don't even know if days seem to run together. And I don't know of, except for one show that I have sorted who had less numbers than the year before, and that was only because they had to move facilities, and that facility limited them to 200 entries, and that is the only reason why they had less numbers. And they had to put on their Facebook, first come, first serve, and they had a waiting list for people if they decided, we're not going to make it, for people to fill in. And so it has been crazy. That first weekend, I was literally in a little pop-up tent 50 feet from a guy's back door in Colorado. I've never seen anything quite like it. I don't remember what the numbers were. It was like over 500 head of hogs, and I think probably between the lambs and goats, 400. And it was from like 11 different states. It was insane.
That's awesome.
I think the numbers are up everywhere. And just as Tyler touched on before, I think it is because people are realizing, and when I talk at these shows, I tell them every single time, and they're probably tired of me saying this, that for years and decades, we have just assumed that this would be here and kind of a little bit taken it for granted. And now we have come to a point in not just the junior livestock industry, but in the livestock show industry as a whole, where we realize that that's not the case. And I'm competitive. I know Tyler's competitive. Dale is competitive, probably even more so. And I tell them that when you compete, it's not always, you don't always make a bunch of friends. But now more than ever, we have to band together, even with those people that we may not be the closest with, and link up and join forces so we can get these kids back into that ring. And when they get in there, the gloves are off again and we can compete. And, if we win, we're happy. If we're not, we're disappointed. And that's part of it. But we're all going to have to come together and fight more than ever to keep this going, because it's a crucial point in our history.
at this point, people are coming together as well as they ever have in the past. And it's a great, great experience. I think that we can come together and we can be appreciative when a show happens. And I hope it continues once we get out of COVID. And I don't know when that's going to happen. I think we've got this delayed response of New York starting. And as we talked about earlier, it seems like it's obviously hitting Texas and California pretty hard right now. Well, I think it's going to have to go through that phase no matter what we do. It's going to happen. We're going to deal with this for a while, but let's hope we can do just that, deal with it, adapt, think outside the box, whatever we need to do to make that happen. Tyler, I have another direction I wanted to visit with you a little bit, and the dollars that are generated for scholarships. I'm not familiar with the exact numbers, but 350,000 in scholarships at OYE, and then the dollars that go into the sale. What is your philosophy? And I've been to OYE the past couple years, helping some clients and some families there and supporting them. It's interesting, and it's such a big deal to get that pull and to get to that sales slot is just like winning the whole show for most of those families. That's their goal, and it's a big deal, and it's really, really a lifelong memory that those families can share. What's your philosophy, or share your philosophy a little bit? And Ryan and I are a little biased here in terms of participating versus competing, but what's your philosophy on how many make the sale and why?
To be quite frank, the sale numbers have been that since I can remember exactly what they are. We sell 72 steers, and a lot of people say, well, you sell the most steers, you sell more steers, and yet it's your lowest number. Well, this show was started as a steer show, and that's just kind of part of tradition. It takes a little more to compete in that capital wise, and it's just history. We sell 65 pigs, even though it's by far our biggest show with almost 3,000 head shown. So those slots are very, very precious. And then we sell 45 sheep and 35 goats. And that's just kind of what the numbers have been. People come all the time and want to increase the numbers or decrease that number. But, one thing that's important to me is to keep it where it's difficult to make the sale, because that drives competition. And it also teaches young people that just because you participate doesn't mean you're going to win. And I think it drives the quality. I think it drives the work ethic. And I think that's vitally important. And then I think it's important on my job to keep it where those cattle in the sale ring, or any cattle, any species in the sale ring, average really, really good, because that helps drive the competition as well and make people work even harder. And both of I think we could give away $0 in our premium sale and kids would still work really, really hard in Oklahoma just to make the limousine. I've had more parents tell me that limousine has broke them than any other thing about OYE, trying to get in the limousine. And I'll tell you, I've experienced it firsthand having a showman in my house now, because you do whatever you can to get them in there, in terms of work ethic and spending the hours and even the capital you got to invest. So anyway, when Justin Whitefield had the idea for that limousine, it was brilliant.
There is absolutely nothing like the OYE Grand Drive. And there's been a lot of different shows try to emulate it and recreate it. And, those are fun too. But I promise you, being someone who is not from Oklahoma, the first time I ever witnessed that, I was literally dumbstruck. And you can hear about it and people can tell you about it, but until you actually witness it and see that go down, and more importantly, see the looks on those kids' faces when they get out of that limousine. And if you'll actually look to the back and see the look on the parents' faces while they're watching those kids have that experience, there's nothing else like it. And it cannot be duplicated, I promise.
I appreciate it. And every year I'm getting goosebumps right now just talking about it. It's the one thing I look forward to most every year. But you talking about parents, just seeing my daughter get out of it in 2019, we didn't get to have it this year, but just it beat every feeling I'd ever had as a parent, besides maybe the day she was born. It's really neat. And I wish it was something every livestock exhibitor across the United States could see, because it just drives you to work so much harder. What's crazy is you think about all the great showmen that have come from Oklahoma and the great families over the last 15, 16, 17 years that we've been doing it. And it's amazing, the kids you would name off the quickest, some of them haven't even been in the limousine, and some of them maybe been in it one time. You just assume I could name the kids off, and I don't want to go down that list, but you'd think are in it every year. and they're not necessarily. It is so hard to get in that limousine. I think that just drives the competition and the work ethic even more.
I absolutely love that fact they can make those memories, and it's hard to even put into words. And Tyler, you're doing it so well. But when I think about the effort it takes on your part to get that limousine, and I'm sure it takes a little bit of effort, but it pales in comparison to the experience it's giving those kids and that family. And I don't understand, and I'm not trying to be negative, but let's do some more of those things across the country, and the small things that don't require that much that'll make such a huge difference on the other side. And I think it comes back, Tyler, just to what you talked about earlier. Let's focus on the exhibitor, and the rest plays out extremely well.
That's right. And it costs a lot of money to do the lights and the truss and the video boards and everything we do. It would just bumfuzzle people how much we spend on that. But it pays for itself tenfold in terms of sponsorship, and then another intangible thing, what it does for those young people. Bob Funk's our chairman, and his motto in life is sell, sell, sell. And he is a marketing guru with his business. And he is always pushing us to market more and to think more out of the box, how to make kids feel special and make them and help them get started in their life. And I appreciate that so much from him and our board, how they push us to focus on the young people and to develop those experiences they can't get anywhere else right here at OYE.
Well, Tyler, it truly is the greatest show, and everything that's put together there. I compliment you and your staff, and I know what it takes to go into that. And obviously, we appreciate you taking the time to join Ryan and I for sharing some knowledge and opening up to us on what's going on in the COVID scene and some of the unique things that you're doing outside the box. We appreciate you joining us today. Thank you for such.
Hey, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it, the conversation. Appreciate both of you.
We are so fortunate to have two of the leading livestock show officials with us today to help shed some light on how shows are dealing with COVID-19 and what changes are ahead. Brandi, Herndon. Brandi currently serves as a Chief Agribusiness Officer at Expo Square and Tulsa State Fair. Brandi grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado on an equine ranch. During her childhood, she was heavily involved in showing Simmental cattle. From high school, she attended Connors State College and judged for my good friend Jerry McPeak. Went on to receive a bachelor's degree from Oklahoma State University. Currently, Brandi, alongside her husband and two daughters, reside in Bristow, Oklahoma, where they're involved in raising Angus cattle, Maine and Jew, Simmental, and a few club calves. Brandi is quick to tell you her most important position is as a show mom. Brandi states she and her husband are blessed to have the opportunity to raise their kids in the barn. Brandi, thank you for joining Ryan and I today.
No, thank you both for inviting me to join you today. I thoroughly enjoy your podcast and appreciate all that you guys do.
Brandi, I want to jump in with both feet and have you communicate the struggles you're facing to keep Tulsa State Fair on track, to allow it to even take place, and your personal struggles as a show mom, because you're involved in this from both directions. Tell us a little bit how you work through those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So for many across the country, I think our organization is structured just a little bit differently. There's very few shows across the country that also manage the facility. So not only do we manage our livestock and horse shows that we host during the Tulsa State Fair, but we also are involved in our interim events. You know, we have events 365 days out of the year, the fair being one of those. And obviously the fair is our most important event because obviously that is ours, the only event that we produce each year. And so it's our baby. And so we have a fantastic team here in Tulsa, and we are planning forward. We're very optimistic with our planning process and moving forward. And obviously, just like everyone else across the country, we continue to monitor the situation and put forth, necessary modifications. But at the end of the day, it is our goal to continue to produce a fair that is safe, clean, and then our mantra here in a normal year anyways is safe, clean, friendly, and fun. We obviously would not move forward if we didn't feel that we could first and foremost be safe and provide a safe, clean environment while still remaining friendly and fun. Obviously COVID has brought forth some challenges. I think anyone in the event management world or that is in show management would tell you we're all very detail-oriented individuals. I can't speak for everyone, but I know myself, I'm a very type A personality. We plan year-round to produce the best show and implement the positive changes each year to make the event bigger and better every year. And obviously this year, with all of the unknowns that are being thrown at us, the planning process has been very difficult. And I would be lying if I didn't tell you a little stressful. So I think most of us, in talking to some of my counterparts across the country, would tell you that we all, since late March, early April, have plan A's all the way to plan Z's and not really sure what plan at the end of the day we're going to move forward with. But I know for us and our organization, it really has forced us to dig deeper. Just as an event complex since mid-March through late June, we had no revenues coming in. So it has impacted us significantly as an organization. And so we've really had to dig deep. And two questions that we have posed to ourselves as a management team. A, what are our priorities as a fair? And two, what are the necessities that we have to move forward with the fair? And so I guess just to focus more on the livestock show side of it, obviously the number one priority for us is our junior livestock shows. And obviously when you start thinking of ways that we can modify and be financially responsible to the organization, as well as just answering that question, what is necessary to produce a successful livestock show this year? So an example of that would be obviously with your junior market animal shows. You obviously have to have a judge. You have to have the volunteers that are helping facilitate and run those shows on a daily basis. And you have to have scales, and obviously a safe environment to house the livestock. So as we're terming it around within our own team is really the sparkle and the fluff of the fair. Our exhibitors are probably not going to see this year. It's just going to be the necessary things that it takes to produce and have a livestock show is really our focus this year. I wanted to address and touch on too, it's heartbreaking as a show manager myself to see all the cancellations that have happened and knowing that there are staff behind those decisions that I know these decisions have been extremely hard, complex, and stressful for them. And I know oftentimes I feel that show management, is viewed as we're the authorities, we're the rule enforcers. But in all actuality, obviously those are important components and parts of our positions, but and I think I can speak for most of the management across the country, but many of us have been raised in this industry, so we're naturally just passionate about it. Some of us are also producers ourselves, and most of us have or have had kids that are currently showing themselves. So these decisions, have been taken very seriously. And there's no other people other than the show managers that are there working behind the scenes to make these things possible. There are no other people that are more passionate or live. We are like true livestock enthusiasts, and we want these things to move forward and we want them to be successful. And also, Dale had touched on it. I have two young daughters who also, we have calves in the barn right now. Have calves that we're hopeful we're going to be able to take out this fall, hopefully to the American Royal and to some other shows. And we have steers on feed for OYE. And so we too are taking those risks and those hopes that our kids are going to have these opportunities to exhibit their livestock at these shows. But I would hope that the COVID, I know it has for our family, I hope that people can take away from it that we're all just so blessed to be able to raise our kids in a barn and to provide them these opportunities. And if they're not able to move forward, with their plan, exhibiting at their whatever show they're shooting for, I think they're better people for being in the barn and working on those projects. My daughter, my oldest, was fortunate enough at OIE to exhibit her heifers, and we were so thankful and grateful for that opportunity. But she also had a steer that she wasn't able to show, and obviously that steer had one opportunity and one chance, but I wouldn't take that back for anything. It was disappointing we didn't get to show him, but I wouldn't take back that time in the barn with him and the lessons we learned with that particular calf. And like I said, just grateful and blessed. And hopefully that's the attitude of most as we move forward into the late summer and the fall, that hopefully people are just grateful and kind and appreciative of the opportunities to show.
Well, Brandi, I think that you brought up a really, really valid point, and one that gets missed a lot. And I don't think that there's any show manager of any livestock show that has made the decision to cancel because it was easier. And I think if you got down to their core, they all want these events to go on and carry on, not just because it looks better for them, but because they do have appreciation, not just for the junior kids, but also for those open show exhibitors, the livestock industry as a whole. And that's why they became a show manager, because I've never run a state fair, but I've run lots of jackpot shows, and it's pretty much a thankless job. And you get a lot of the griping and complaining and not a whole lot of the thank yous and appreciation. I was very fortunate and humbled to get to judge the Tulsa State Fair 2 years in a row. And I can tell you and our listeners that staff and yourself are some of the best that I have ever got to work with in the nation. And it is a top-notch, top-rate event. And I'm sure it will continue to be for many, many years. But following up on what you were saying, I think it is valuable for our listeners to know, and I want them to hear it from you, who actually makes the final decision if the Tulsa State Fair can actually happen this year?
That's a pretty easy, simple one. So it would be our management team along with our board. And our board is comprised of 5 members. 3 of those are the 3 Tulsa County commissioners, and the other 2 are the appointed trustees to that board.
And so when y'all have to come to that point, et cetera, what will be the main focus on their decision and how they vote, I guess, is the biggest thing?
I think the plan that us as the management team move forward with, which we are currently working on and finalizing, because obviously the goal for us would be to move forward with our full fair. That would be the first goal, with some modifications put into place. The second goal, if we did not feel like we could move forward with the full fair, and by full fair, I'm defining that as all the vendor buildings, food vendors, carnival, etc., because that's our goal. And we're feeling pretty confident that we're going to be able to reach that goal. But like I said, we've all lived on this Corona roller coaster for the last several months. So things are fluid and things could continue to change. But we're confident and optimistic that we can put forth a plan and move forward. However, if we're in a position, I've also talked, because our staff, we're all really close. And I mean, obviously, this has been the point of conversation for us, countless meetings and conversations, but everything's been thrown out on the table for discussion. But we have recognized that if we don't feel we can move forward with the full fair, like I said, in a modified version, then it is our priority and duty to move forward with our junior livestock show in some form or fashion. I will tell you that probably mid-May, we made the decision, again, a decision that was definitely not easy for me, that we would not move forward with any of our open livestock or horse shows, that we were just only solely going to focus on our junior livestock shows. And we made that announcement June 1, and we felt it was very important to make that announcement at that time because June 1 was the date that we were opening our junior livestock show nominations up And then two, it was the opening, I should say, in a semi-fashion phase 4 for Oklahoma, and us as a facility opening back up, opening our doors to start hosting events again. Just felt it was important to make that announcement right out of the gate. And also out of respect for our open show exhibitors, we knew deep down that was going to have to be the decision we were going to have to make moving forward. So why not just make that announcement and spare them all the time that they were going to put forth in those summer months, whether it was, the open cattle shows or sheep or the boar goat show or even our horse shows. Felt it was important that they knew just as soon as we knew that decision was going to be made.
Brandi, I really appreciate that transparency, and so many families are out there trying to decide where are they going and how long do we keep these animals in the barn, and coming out with that information just as soon as you can. It helps everybody. If it's going to come out at some point, let's just do it and be as open and honest and transparent as we can. I like the fact that you and your management team have that decision. Is there anything that comes into play? Let's assume that you guys want to go forward with this, but the mayor or the health department or the governor, and you're in a state that's far more fortunate than most in terms of how they're looking at that. I assume they can come in and just pull the plug on you if they absolutely choose to, or is that not an accurate statement?
Obviously, similar to a Houston or a OYE situation, obviously it would be all of our local officials that would have an opportunity to be involved in those decisions. And like I said, as a team and with our board, we know we're not going to move forward unless we know for sure that we can do it in a responsible and safe manner. And I will say, with the hosting of our events that we've had in June and now here in July, we've worked really closely with the Tulsa Health Department and feel that we have a very good, positive relationship with them. They have been very supportive and complimentary of I call it our COVID plan / COVID marketing that we have released through our signage and hand sanitation stations that we've invested in, and all the other little details and things we're doing to maintain and provide a safe environment for everyone who visits our grounds, because we've had numerous consumer shows that started really mid-June, and we've had several large horse shows thus far, and all of them have really gone successfully. So again, we have a great relationship with them, and I feel like moving forward, I think that they would be honest with us and would tell us their concerns. And of course, we would address those and would work together with them to bring forth a responsibly safe event to the community.
That is excellent, because we have a lot of listeners out there that are just, they don't really know how these decisions are being made. And the fact that you've worked with the health department, I'm assuming you're implementing their suggestions and building that relationship, that lends a lot more comfort. And we don't know where numbers are going to be or hospitalizations. And you stated so well, we're in a fluent situation that things are going to continue to change. And I don't think as of right now, you can really say, where are we going to be in a couple months? I don't think anybody knows. I wish we did, but I really don't believe that. And I think as we use New York as an example, they really went through it quick and first, and it maybe took a little longer to spread throughout the country. But it is my opinion that some of the larger cities are going to still rise up. They're going to come back down and level out, and life will be good as long as we keep that hospital space available, and hopefully it'll be positive. But I really, really appreciate the approach your management team is taking and the proactive with the health department. I'm very hopeful that you guys can move forward with as much of what you normally would as possible, and the fact that you're willing to do it in as safe a manner is all possible. With that said, do you see any positive changes as we move on to 2021 and beyond that may come from COVID-19 as far as moving forward, some positive things that we could pull out of this?
Absolutely. I stated earlier, it's really forced our organization to dig deeper, to carefully analyze every single thing we do day in and day out, along with the production of our fair. And it's funny, some of the conversations we've had, well, why do we do this? Well, it's something we've always done. Some of those things that we've always done might not necessarily be the way that we'll move forward or that we'll be able to continue to justify with our current budget situation. And honestly, some of those things probably needed looked at several years ago and adjusted anyways. So that has been positive. And I do have one example just related to the livestock show itself. In early April, I put together a strategic planning committee that consisted of members of all of our species committees. And just to really look at things and say, hey, how are we going to move forward? We have some things like our nomination process on the horizon. How can we modify this process to A, be financially responsible to the organization, but B, not implement too much change for our exhibitors? There is a significant initial investment for our nominations, purchasing the ear tags as well as the DNA kits. And said, I can't move forward. The state that our facility is in right now, I can't make that initial investment. So how are we going to move forward? So what we did is we structured our nomination process very similar to an American Royal or a Denver process, where we required the kids to submit their own DNA. And we did put a DNA envelope template up on our website that they could print out and put on the front of their envelope, that has all the proper information along with the signatures, etc. And then we move forward with only requiring a permanent ID on that animal. So for steers, it was a tattoo, sheep and goats, a scrapies tag, and the hogs, an ear notch. And then they were required to go online and submit all of their exhibitor information along with their animal information and pay for their nomination that way. And I will say internally, and also we've been hearing externally that we're like, this is a change we'll probably keep moving forward. At entry deadline time, it is our goal we will then, based off of the actual entries, we'll order those visual tags to put in the species, so it makes it easier for our committees as they're checking animals in and et cetera. But that's definitely a change that we will probably move forward with. And COVID basically forced us to make those changes.
Brandi, once there is a vaccine for COVID or a proven therapeutic out there on the market, do you think that stock shows will return back to where they were and we will no longer have to worry about the fear of cancellations and things like that?
I sure hope so. And the optimistic person that I am optimistic that hopefully we will get back to normal. Might be a new normal, because like we touched on, there's several things through the COVID that just have forced us to dig deeper and make some necessary positive changes. But I, for one, am looking forward to 2021, and I'm looking forward to implementing our open shows back into the schedule and moving forward.
Brandi, thank you for sharing your story and allowing Ryan and I, along with our listeners, to better understand what show managers are doing to try to keep these shows from being canceled, and the fact that show managers, you guys are not just officials. Just like your story, you have kids involved. It makes me feel better knowing that you guys are doing everything possible, that if we can move forward safely, you're going to do it. And for that, I thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.